This is How to Shot Web, Better Web Hacking and Mobile Hacking in 2015. I know Dan Kaminsky's talking right now, so I really appreciate everyone being here. He's way smarter than me. So this is me. I work for BugCrowd. I'm the Director of Technical Operations. I manage a team of hackers who validates the bugs behind the scenes of a bug bounty, large-scale bug bounty program. In 2014, I participated as only a researcher. I didn't work for them yet. And this talk is about my methodology that I used there to do web hacking, as well as a little bit of mobile stuff, as well as stuff I learned from other researchers while doing this work. So what is this really about? It's just how to hack stuff better and practically. And I put a lot of memes, and some of them are not funny, apparently, my wife says, so it's okay. So more specifically, what I did is I started off with my methodology, which was a normal pen tester methodology when I started doing this work, a basic web application assessment. And so I then went out and manually parsed out all of the public researchers of all the badass bug bounty hunters I knew. So it was about 150 people that I knew just around the Twitter scene, not Titter scene, sorry. Twitter scene, as well as people I just knew who were good at it, right? And so I went through every single article they had ever written from the beginning of the crowdsourced bug bounty scene, and also all of the Google and Facebook programs that I could find, like, enterprise-based bug bounty stuff. And then I created a presentation around what I distilled around that knowledge. So this is kind of the stuff that I'm going to bring in this presentation. Philosophy shifts from doing bug bounty testing to, from web app testing, traditional web app testing. Discovery techniques, mapping methodology, parameters often attacked, useful fuzz strings, bypass or filter evasion techniques, and some tooling that I think is cooler than other tooling. Cool. So the first section is philosophy. So the differences between kind of bug bounty hunting and being a web pen tester, I'm not really to argue this debate. There's a lot of people who feel strongly about both sides, and they're both right, honestly. But when you get down to the practical work, you introduce a lot of stuff here. You introduce time onto a security tester, right? They're not used to competition when they're doing this kind of stuff, unless you're playing in a CTF, which you're used to that. And I played in some CTFs, so I was kind of used to it. You're only incentivizing in one side for what you find, and not the hours you put in. So, this is a basic overview of how they differ, but the talk's more about the technical stuff. But yeah, you basically tailor your methodology based around finding stuff in the 20% as opposed to the 80% across application assessment. So we'll go into how that 80-20 rule kind of fits in the rest of the slides. So if you're doing regular web app assessment, you're following these two Bibles, right? The OWASP Tester's Guide or the Web Application Hacker's Handbook. This is usually what you're trained from and what your internal methodologies are built off of at almost any of the good consultancies. And the authors are, super great testers, right? But these take you from A to Z, and, even though they find good bugs, they take a long time to complete in their full scale. So bug bounties are different. So if you want to do web hacking, you want to get started, these are what you go for. But my talk is a little bit different. So let's talk about discovery in web application assessment for a bounty. So what you want to do in a bug bounty is basically find the road less traveled. And this is if you're aiming to get paid, I think. So you can attack the flagship application that the company has, right? But really, that's not where the vulnerabilities are going to be most of the time. That application has been tested by a pen test team. It's probably had a bug bounty on it for a long time. What you really want to find is the parts of the applications that are like subdomains or maybe obscure web servers on different ports. You want to find acquisitions that maybe the company has had recently that came in from a different development team. And they might have a whole slew of problems that came from a whole different group. You want to look at functionality changes and redesigns on sites, mobile websites, because you're set to render differently on your phone, and also new mobile app versions when you're testing. So we're going to go into some tools and stuff I use to find a new surface area for you to attack. So Recon NG is this tool that basically allows you to do a whole bunch of automated OSINT stuff. And one part of it is it has all these modules to do subdomain brute forcing and subdomain discovery. Now, subdomain discovery is a big part of finding, applications that have been left out there. I mean, marketing spins up a site, dev spins up a test site, like you have like integration stuff left up. So finding those and hacking those and getting RCE or code execution through those sites is kind of where you can get big payouts. So this script, what it does is it iteratively scrapes Google for all subdomains on a given web property. So let's say acme.com. This will scrape Google for everything that is in Acme, www.acme.com, and then iteratively remove those results until you're down to this long list of subdomains. It also scrapes Bing, Baidu, Netcraft, and brute forces subdomains like your common Fierce tool would. So this is on GitHub. It's a simple shell wrapper around ReconNG, so you need to have ReconNG installed. If you use Kali Linux, you can just pop this script in and go. So this is the output of something like that against a company like this. You can see there's a lot of output, probably a lot of domains here that have gone under-assessed as far as you go. So this is that idea of iterating through Google to find subdomains. So here you have site and then minus www sites. And then I found on the first hit was sandbox, so I removed that on the next run through. And this is that scraping that's happening that the tool is doing. And then you get more entries floating to the top. So you get credit apply or business or shopping or advertising. And you just keep on removing these until you have all of them. And then you brute force, and then you end up with a huge list of sites to assess. And then you want to go through, and on your entity that you're attacking, you want to find any mergers or acquisitions that maybe aren't the domain that you're given, right? But they've just purchased a company, right? So Oculus, purchased by Facebook, had some bugs, and they got popped as soon as they were acquired, and they were not under the Facebook like 6-month rule, or I don't know if it's 6 month or I can't remember how long, but they got popped immediately, right? And that was a whole different dev team, but owned by Facebook and worthy for an RCE bug. They got hit with SQL injection and a custom header, and that was great. So, well, not great, but it was good for the bounty hunter. So, So Wikipedia for Facebook and Google does this really well. People updates these things all the time when there's an acquisition for like stock reasons, right? So keep an eye on these. If your company has, purchased something else and they have some new domain and it might not be in the bug bounty brief yet, you can go after this if you're doing those types of bounties. There's also a repository of links of every kind of vuln that's come out on Facebook and PayPal and Google. People like to share this information. This one is hosted on Facebook. I have no idea why. The link's in there, and the slides have everything hyperlinked, so you can go check it out. But these are all the blog articles that reference bugs here. Now, why is this important if somebody else has already found these bugs? Because bugs get represented across the domain in different places. So you can tell a lot about an organization once you read these articles and find the same bug in other locations, like those subdomains you found, maybe rogue web servers and things like that. It also kind of tells you what they're going to do to fix them, like how they filtered out input, and you get a lot of intel around the application. So, really doing a lot of research on your target can help, but it's not the fast stuff. So port scanning, I mentioned port scanning. So port scanning is not just for NetPen. How I hacked Facebook, there was an article by Ryan Dewhurst who was like, I started out port scanning and found some weird server, which was a Jenkins script console with no auth, and that was it. He got in. Like, simple as that, right? Like a $8,000 bug or something like that, right? Like, or even more, I don't remember. So is.net, the Microsoft domain that, evangelizes .net, had RDP open to the world with MS-12.020 on it. Vulnerable, and so that was a thing. So yeah, just go ahead and use a simple nmap syntax to start port scanning all of your sites, and make sure you check all those services. This syntax will port scan for all ports on a domain, as well as pull out any HTTP servers titles and display those in the output. It's a SynScan and OS fingerprint and stuff like that too. So mapping. So you've found all of these new servers, right? Like maybe subdomains, or maybe you found an acquisition or something like that. And now you want to move into mapping an individual application. So, and taking notes is really important when you're doing this. Whether you're doing it inside of like a notepad, or just using pen and paper, or like Evernote. I use Evernote. all my bugs are templatized, so when I find them, I can just copy and paste into the disclosure email or whatever like that. So, so these are some mapping tips that I use right away. So Google is actually your friend, right? You can get a lot of parameter information from just Googling a domain and figure out like what happens there. I know there's some like parameter parsing scripts. I couldn't find a really good one for this presentation, but just will parse parameters out of the Google cache stuff. But really the next big thing is directory brute forcing, right? Finding unlinked content that's not supposed to be there. So a lot of people use like Dirbuster or Content Discovery and Burp for this kind of thing. And that's good. They're good lists. But those lists were created by going out and spidering the internet and finding every path after the top level domain and then prioritizing them. There's some other lists that are better for this type of work. So the Raft lists are these lists that came out of a talk maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Raft was an application proxy. It was a decent one, but it's since been discontinued. But its lists have, for directory brute forcing, have lived on. They are a spider of the internet's robot.txt files. So everything that everybody doesn't want you to see is in this directory brute forcing list. So it's super sick. I can't tell you how many bugs I found just using this list. Like config files, badly configured Git, stuff. It's just all over the place. SVN Digger is another list like this. They went out and spidered all the SVN projects. So if your site or your target is an open source place, you can take all the paths that have been converted for you to directory brute force to get better application coverage or find config files. Git Digger is the same thing for Git. So after you do some unlinked content discovery or directory brute forcing, whatever you want to call it, you move on to trying to identify your platform. So there's just some really simple wins here. Wapalizer and Built With are Chrome extensions that you can just click, and they will give you pretty much the whole stack by looking at the headers, the comments in the pages, the way they render, like analytics things that have been integrated, and they'll just give you like the whole server stack. And they'll even give you version numbers if they can identify them. So Wapalizer and Built With are super sick. Retire.js is one of my new favorites. It will profile all of the server-side JavaScript libraries and tell you if they're out of date, as well as give you all the vulnerabilities before that patch or your vulnerable version has. So you'll get a list of prioritized cross-site scripting or whatever is in jQuery at the time, right? And then once you identify all of these servers' version numbers, you just go check for CVEs and and server-side stuff. So that's pretty standard. That's web stuff. But these are some good tools. Now, if you happen to come across a CMS, which is like the pen tester's dream because those things suck and the plugins suck, you want to use these two tools. WP Scan for WordPress, a lot of people use this already. It will identify all plugins and users for WordPress install, as well as look up any vulns that are associated with those plugins that have been disclosed. And then CMS Map for Drupal and what is the other CMS? Drupal and Joomla. There you go. Thank you. Awesome. So those are the two that have really yielded any value for me across CMSs. So here you see a screenshot of WP Scan, and it's found a version of a plugin or a theme that already has like cross-site script or a file upload vulnerability in it. Sometimes there's false positives, but honestly, for what this script does, it provides so much value, so it's great. So the directory brute forcing we talked about a little bit earlier. I mean, the workflow for this a lot of people do, but I just put this slide in here because I see a lot of people do it a little bit weird. I see people brute force like off the top level path a lot and then just stop, right? And so they'll get some errors and they don't know what to do with it. So they'll go to acme.com and get a 200, and then they'll go to backlog and they'll get a 404, and they'll get more 404s and more 404s, and you know there's nothing there. But then they'll hit like control panel and see a 401, and then they'll be like, well, I can't do anything there. I'm not authorized, right? So they don't brute force after control panel. And there's so many like messed up access control on web server bugs that you can exploit. If you just brute force after that, you'll probably find something. So I just see this a lot where people stop after the top level domain when they're doing directory enumeration. So that's kind of the workflow you're doing there. Some other things that you can do is mapping and vuln discovery using open source intelligence. So these are 5 sites, six methods that you can use to find already published bugs or almost already public bugs. I mean, I guess they're considered like end day or whatever. But XSS.com, Reddit XSS, PunkSpider is actually a burp engine that just scans the internet. So if your target is a high-profile site, information might already be in here for your test, and you can pull it out and use it to your advantage, even if those bugs have already been disclosed. And I've found bugs that were on here but not disclosed to the customer through the bounty, so that's actually worked before. It was like a super easy win. They help you get a feeling for what the company has faced before as far as issues like prevalent cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, file uploads, and then you can do regression testing on all the domains that you found earlier in the presentation. So yeah, go out and use these resources to try to find bugs in the platform as quickly as possible, because they're free and they're already out there, and the customer should know about them anyway. It's the responsible thing to do. Okay, so this is my intern, Ben. He's never spoken before at DEF CON. Neither have I, actually. This is my first DEF CON speaking. But he did an awesome project, and he's going to talk about it for a couple seconds. I really like it. So
hello everyone. My name is Ben. Like Jason mentioned, I'm an intern at Buckcrowd on Jason's team. For the past couple of months, we actually gathered a bunch of JSON files that includes all the metadata for each bug bounty program that's out there. So there's 250 plus bounty programs that are included in this project, and they all include information like how much the minimum bounty is, how much the maximum is, what mobile apps are included, what web apps are included, and what's not included in the scope of the program as well. And we actually use all this data and fed it into different scripts, like you see on the screen. We fed it into knock, and it just went through every single one of those programs and brute forced them for subdomains. And this also is available on GitHub account, and everyone could go and use it if they want to. So the JSON files look similar to this. This is Yahoo's program a couple months ago. If they've updated, we don't know. But what we have is a DNS record that shows that's the yahoo.com itself and all subdomains of it, and Flickr, and all subdomains of Flickr are included in the scope, as well as all their mobile apps that are included in the scope as well. And as you can see in the bottom, there is two domains, which is yahoo.net and its subdomains, and yahoo.net itself not being included in the scope of the program. So what we ended up doing with this, using Ruby, we wrote a script. We fed every single one of those JSON files, and we crawled them. And using grep, for a sample for this one, we grep redirect, and you can see we couldn't disclose the domain, but there's a bunch of sites that are out there that have the redirect out there that you can easily report and take them out and report it to the vendor. Taking it further, same idea, we use all the JSON files, and we fit that into Intrigue, which Intrigue is a API framework that is for intelligence gathering, and it does a bunch of tasks that you can see on the left side of the screen. It includes doing subdomain brute force, web spider, nmap, and you name it, we can do it with Intrigue. So also Intrigue is available on GitHub as well. It's open source. Go ahead and fork it and commit to it if you need to. What we ended up doing for Intrigue is we parsed every single JSON file with help of Ruby. And you can see at the line when it says R, we are taking the task, which is called DNS brute sub, which is a subdomain brute forcer. And we need to give it an entity and then options that are all included in the manual. And we are running that for a JSON file, which at the bottom shows it's being assigned an ID that you can just go on your local host and check it out and see what Intrigue has found. So for an example, we did Intrigue.io, and for a DNS brute force, you can see all those subdomains that have been out there that Intrigue found with their IP addresses as well. And make sure you guys check it out. It's like I said, it's online, and you guys could, the possibilities are, it's infinite. You can do whatever you can think of out there with those, and being a bug bounty hunter, I think it's a huge tool for everybody out there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a sick tool and a sick framework, both mapping and recon entry. I mean, if you've used Foca and Maltego and everything like that, it's like an open source version of those licensed tools. I love both those tools, by the way, just saying. Use them both if you can. But But Intrigue is going to be sick. You guys should check it out. So, okay, so on to where are we at? Auth in session. I'm gonna have to blow through some of this because this presentation is long and like there's a ton of stuff in here. So auth-related bugs. The one thing I want to say about these, right? These are low, shallow bugs that everybody hates people to report in bug bounties. The problem is if people start not paying attention to them, you can't chain them to do bigger things, right? So we've had multiple bugs, or I've had multiple bugs where we've had a couple small issues like with password resets or like, you know, something like that. And then we've chained them to make like a critical account takeover bug. So these are really important. But these are the kind of bugs that a lot of people see in like the hashtag like beg bounty instead of bug bounty. You know, people really don't like them. Don't discount them, just note them. And if you don't want to, if they're out of scope, don't do anything with them, but you might be able to use them later. That's all I really have to say about some of these. So session, the kind of same things, right? So failure to invalidate old cookies, like new cookies on login, or no new cookies on login and timeout, never-ending cookie length. Like these are all things you're going to be able to use later when you need to chain bugs, but a lot of times they're out of scope. So either out of scope or unappreciated or duped or something like that. So, but yeah, you should keep them in mind when you continue testing because they can be chained into bigger issues. So the big part of this one is actually tactical fuzzing. So I go through a couple different injection types or vulnerability types here, and so we're going to talk about cross-site scripting and some research that some really cool people have done. So the core idea of cross-site scripting, right? Does the page functionality display something to the users? Like, you know, that's kind of the question I ask myself. You know, can I get reflections somehow with JavaScript? And so you can do manual testing, which is great, right? And you can enter in your meta characters and see if they return. But really, when I'm trying to work fast on a bug bounty, I have 3 or 4 like magic strings that I use. And so you probably used them before. The technical definition for them is polyglot payloads. These are web polyglot payloads. And so the first one you'll probably recognize. This one is RSnake's. They used to call it the RSnake battering ram, or that's what when I worked in pen test, they used to call it. It came out of the XSS cheat sheet. You've probably used this before. You put it into the search bar or comment field, and then you pray that you get cross-site scripting, right? So this is the first one. This is actually a multi-context, filter bypass-based polyglot web payload. It's a mouthful, I know. But basically, it's designed to evade filters. It's allowed to execute in different web contexts. And it's really cool. So I have 3 of these strings that I cite here that if you're just doing bug bounty hunting, you can use and just kind of move along on your critical functions on the site. So this one is from a researcher named Ashar Javed. He does cross-site scripting research. I think he did his PhD in cross-site scripting, which to me is like, it blows my mind. So this is a multi-context filter bypass-based polyglot as well. So you can see here that he's trying to mark up in a whole bunch of different contexts. He's got like an @ sign here to like trick email like filters, or maybe a form only takes emails or something like that. So he actually ran this along like the Alexa top 100, and like 80% of them were vulnerable to just their search parameters with this string. So more ammo for you guys doing bug bounties. This one is one by Matthias Carlson, and is he here right now? Is Matthias here? Hey, there he is. He's awesome. So he did a whole presentation on this idea, polyglot payloads on websites. So this is his multi-context polyglot payload, and so this is one that I use now. So thank you. Other XSS observations when I started parsing bug bounty work, as well as getting bugs myself. So finding input vectors is important. So finding customizable themes or profiles that use CSS, but then you can trick them into using JavaScript to execute cross-site scripting. A lot of names of like events or meetings in any application that deals with those types of things. URI-based XSS is still a big thing when people pull things from the URI and render it for some reason. Importing from a third party, so think like Facebook integration, where they're maybe filtering characters, but your site actually displays Facebook data inline. So you can set your name on Facebook to script alert, and it will alert on this site. JSON post values that didn't return the correct content type. So a lot of people discount web services right away because they think that the content type won't execute cross-site scripting or won't execute JavaScript. And so you have to really check and make sure they're returning the content type. Otherwise, you can get reflected XSS and a lot of web services like that. File upload names, when you're uploading file, just try to change it to script alert or whatever like that. It's going to echo that file name back, usually a lot of places. Uploaded files themselves. This is a huge one, actually, that's all over the place. So a compiled Swift file or an HTML file that's designed to execute its own JavaScript, and you basically attack a file upload. And so a lot of file uploads, there's a whole section here about file uploads. We'll talk about it more in a little bit. Custom error pages where they're echoing out what you can't find, put XSS strings in there. Fake parameters where the page might parse some fake parameter data and put it into your response, and then log in and forgot password forms. Also, this is a Swift parameter XSS is a huge thing as well. I don't think I've ever found a Swift file that I've decompiled that hasn't been vulnerable to either cross-site scripting or remote file include. And actually, Dennis here is like the guy I ask questions to that all the time. So, yeah, so there's things that are like JPlayer and like all of these like COT software that are Swift files that do like media or whatever. Like, so there's a whole OWASP page on the common params that these players use, and then also the injection strings, but these you have to kind of do more manual analysis. So to do that manual analysis, I use this tool called Flashbang, which I think is super awesome. It's by Cure53. You drop it a Swift file on the other end, comes out all of the parameters that might be vulnerable to cross-site scripting. It decompiles it for you, and it displays them along with if they're going to execute out of the context of the Swift file. I highly suggest this tool if you're going to do some Swift hacking. It's way better than like a lot of the old ones. Cool, so SQL injection. The core idea, does the page look like it might need to call on some stored data? Obviously. This is Matthias's SQLi polyglot, where it'll execute in single quote, double quote, and straight into query context. So I'd seen a lot of cross-site scripting polyglots. And you remember, these are things that actually scanners are starting to do, right? They don't want to send 1 million fuzzing payloads to a parameter because you have like 8 million parameters on a page, so it just takes forever to scan things, right? So Matthias in his presentation like has this string, and I imagine a lot of fuzzers, web fuzzers, and scanners will start to pick up on this type of thing if they haven't already. The idea of these multi-context injection strings. So this is awesome as well. So for SQL injection to kind of go through and fuzz things, I also use this project called the SecList project, and it's got a whole bunch of fuzzing lists in it. It was a fork of the FuzzDB, and then we added to it with like username and password lists and all this crazy stuff. Daniel Miesler here actually helped me curate it, and we designed it together. And it's invaluable, right? It's got like by type of injection. So if you want to just do like a login bypass in MySQL, it's got all those curated, all those strings curated that you would usually use to do SQL injection there. I highly suggest using this, and I just load these into Burp, into Intruder when I want to attack a form or something like that, some parameter I think is vulnerable. So other observations, so blind is the predominant SQL injection. You hardly ever get error-based SQL injection anymore. And so like in those cases, you use like benchmark strings and stuff to make the page take a long time to load, and that's how you identify. Whether you take it the whole exploit way is up to you, right? We have a lot of researchers I know who just want to identify and move on, right? I like to run SQL map eventually because it's still king. I mean, there's no other tool that does it as good as SQL map. And that's actually something I learned doing the research, was that everybody used SQL map at some point. So yeah, some tips for SQL map. Basically, when you're doing this, you can actually parse a whole burp log file. So like enable burp to do logging, and then parse the whole log file and actually fuzz the whole log file with SQL map. It takes forever. It's not like the greatest way to do things, but it's also offering a lot of coverage. If you're up against some kind of like blacklist or something like that, SQL map has tamper scripts that you can use, which basically encode all of your attacks so that you can try to evade blacklists. And there's a really good guide on there. It's somewhere on the Bug Crowd forum on DBMS-specific syntax for SQL map tamper strings. So if you're going up against MS SQL or MySQL or something like that, there's a simple string you can pass into SQL map and start fuzzing those parameters and get past blacklists. And then a really fast way to instrument SQL map is SQLi Pi, which is a burp extension, and basically allows you to right-click in any window in burp and send that request to SQL Maps API running on your local box. So like you can just be inside a burp, right-click, and start fuzzing the parameter if you need be. So some common parameters and injection points, like any ID value, currency values, item number values, sorting parameters. I'm not going to go through all these. They're all on the slide. And eventually this is all going to be on GitHub anyway, so you guys can just grab it and use it in your methodologies if you think it's useful. But these are the kind of places where I saw the most injection, and where my research parsed out of other places showed me. This is SQLi Pi. So right-click on a request, send it to SQLi Pi scan, and now that Burp renders scanner results in the target tab, but it doesn't look like this anymore, but you get the idea. So this is my cheat sheet of SQL injection resources when I do SQL injection, broken down by MySQL type, and these are cheat sheets that let you know manual syntax based on MySQL. A lot of these people are like, Pentest Monkeys lists are old. They're still the best. You have to use these, and you have to have them handy when you're doing injection. So there's some really edge case ones at the bottom, like Access, which, God, who uses Access? That sucks. Ingress, DB2, Informix, SQLite 3, and Active Record for Ruby on Rails. So I keep those handy in my Evernote when I'm doing SQL injection testing, and when I see errors or long load times or something like that, I start getting in that mode. So file uploads and file inclusion is the next area. So local file inclusion, the core idea is does it or can it interact with the server file system? Liffey is my cool favorite tool for doing this. Obviously you can do it manually, so I have all of my LFI scripting stuff up on seclist under fuzzing and LFI. So you can see here, I've tried a whole bunch of blacklist bypass or encoding to try to get common, system files. This is on the seclist project. Common parameters or injection points for this type of stuff is you would think of this, but it's good to have it in a list. So file, location, locale, path, display, load, read, or retrieve. These are the most common parameters that you'll find those in. Malicious file uploads. So this is an important and common attack vector when doing this type of testing. Not only just to upload a Swift file and get XSS off of it, but you can also do pretty cool attacks. So one of the ones I like a lot, and it's a DOS, basically an image that specifies itself to be super large but isn't. So you can upload it, and the server will write all this, or will allocate all of this space for it on disk, but it's actually not that big of a file. And you can DOS the application server using images crafted like that. There was a whole blog on it. And then you can actually, one of the things I think is interesting, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but there's a slide about it, is bypassing security zones and storing malware on client servers. So there's, as well as polyglot web payloads, there's also polyglot files which can execute code in different contexts. If you think of a parser reading a file, it can, it basically will look until it finds what it wants and then execute that. So you can create a jar that is actually an executable. So if I make an executable that is malware, but I upload it to your server because you allow me to allow a jar, well, is that a vuln? I don't know. You are technically storing malware on your server for me, right? And I can send the black hats to go retrieve it. But can you do anything about that, right? Are you going to implement a parser to look through the binary data and cut stuff out? I don't think so. That's kind of hard to do. So interesting question there. It's kind of another road. Dan Crawley did a presentation on it here at DEF CON, and it was super sweet, so you should check that out. Oh no. Technical errors. That came at the perfect time, actually. Oh, wow. Okay, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're doing shots.
Okay.
So he's a first-time speaker, and actually, there's a little story while we're getting the shot ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess he mentioned that you went to DEF CON, what?
DEF CON 16.
DEF CON 16. He met someone.
No. I met Julia, my wife, here.
He met his wife here.
Yeah.
So, give him a hand, huh?
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome to the club.
Better bugs. Yeah. Ooh, that's good. Thanks, man.
Now back to the show.
I mean, if I can deal with the laptop issue.
Are these guys doing all right? Should I kick them off the stage, or you want to keep listening to them?
I can go.
You want to keep listening? All right. I guess you can stay.
Okay. All right. Can you give me a second until my throat stops burning?
No.
Okay, all right. All right, let's see if this works. Sweet. Okay. So file upload attacks are a thing. I've never seen any better presentation to guide you along the road of file upload attacks than this guy, Sarush Dali's presentation. And if I butcher names, I'm sorry. I love all these guys. They're bug hunters just like me. So about file upload vulnerabilities. And this includes doing new and novel attacks as well as old attacks to get files past blacklists or, upload, bypassing extension trickery or stuff like that. So I'm trying to give you guys resources as well, like the ones I would use. So, and a lot of this actually got parsed into the new OWASP AppSec testing guide, most of it at least. So I would check that out too, as an intro to malicious file uploads and getting shells and like web shells and stuff. So. Oh, this is what I talked about, Dan Crawley, and I don't know that guy's real name, but yeah, these are the types of binary files that can execute in different ways. So you can see they have like a PDF that's a zip, that's a MBR, or so like, interesting research here coming out there. I would like to see, interesting bugs come out of it. So remote file includes and redirects. Common parameters there, destination continue, redirect, URL, URI, window next. Common blacklist bypasses. These are all kinds of escaping tricks that you use normally in web stuff, but these are the most common ones I found. These are also in sec lists in the LFI and RFI fuzz lists that I use often. So for RFI, these are the common parameters, file, folder, path, style, template, yes. So these are where I saw the most bugs, or other researchers published data around their RFIs, and so these are kind of the type of parameters you can do. And I think eventually, right, the thing you do here is you write a burp extension. I haven't yet, right, but that just like automates anytime you see these, it sends it to like Logger or something like that, so you can just go test them later. I haven't done it because I just do it with eyeballs, but it's probably the better way to do it, is write an extension to do this work. Okay, so cross-site request forgery. How much time do I have? 10 minutes? Okay, I think I can do it. Okay, so CSRF. Everybody knows about CSRF, right? Like, how do you execute CSRF? You find some function in the website that does something, right? And it's a security-related function, change password or whatever, right? There's a list later of the functions. And then you right-click and burp and create proof of concept. That's like CSRF nowadays. So what you really have to focus on in bug bounties is CSRF bypass. It's customers who have CSRF protections but haven't implemented them enough. So common CSRF bypasses in my research yielded removing the token from the request, removing the parameter value from the request, adding control characters to the parameter value, using a second identical CSRF parameter, or changing the request method. So check this out. This tool has gotten no love. I don't know why. I think it's been out for 2 years already. It's called Burpee. Have any of you used this tool before? No, good. Give you something to take away. So what Burpee does, you enable logging in Burp, and you crawl a site completely that has cross-site request forgery protection in it, right, like a CSRF token. And then you create this template and tell it what the token was, what a good result is for getting a page, what an error page looks like. And this template is actually really easy to edit. This is the sample one. This has been out for, I think, 2 years already. I don't understand why people don't use this. Super sweet, right? So then you write this template. It's a Python script. And then you run his Python script Burpee on your burp log file, and it re-requests all of those across the whole domain. Every request that you've ever made in burp re-requests with those first 3 attacks for CSRF bypass. Then it produces an HTML report telling you which ones gave different error messages, which ones came out the same, and prioritizes CSRF bypasses for you. So he made a lot of money doing this to Facebook and Twitter. Because it wasn't a direct burp extension, it didn't get a lot of notice. I randomly found it on GitHub, and I was like, sweet, this is awesome. So this is part of the HTML output. Here's the base request. Here's the first crafted request, and then the response. And then you get a report back saying if they came back the same, it diffs them. So I highly suggest that tool. It's linked in the talk. Another way to do it is just to check for every request across a whole burp log file that didn't have the token in it, the actual parameter. So this is another script that does that. It's another Python script that runs on a burp log file also that went undetected kind of a little bit. So super sweet. I use these all the time and finds bugs with these all the time. So CSRF, just some common critical functions like add and upload file, password change, email change, transfer money or currency, delete a file, edit your profile, things like that. So these are commonly where you see CSRF and that rewards big bugs. So privilege, transport, and logic kind of get mashed into a section. So privilege, auth and logic kind of get blurred a lot, but my testing thing is just, you have an administrative user, you need a couple accounts to do this, and then you have a low privilege user. And then, the low privilege user just tries to directly call functions that are only for an admin, right? Pretty simple. But to automate that across multiple functions, you might need some tooling, and so this is what I use for that. It's called Autorize. This one is available on the Burp store. And basically, you spider a site completely, you run through it, all of your post requests as an admin user, then you go through as a lower user and you give that information to Autorize and you run the tool and it tells you which ones the lower user was able to access that the admin user was also able to access, and you look through those in your burp output. So common functions or views that I check for privilege escalation or anything like that, and these can be actually combined with the last two sections, is add a user, delete a user, start projects, change account info, view customer analytics, or like there's a page that tells everything about whatever that site does. You want to try that view. Payment processing view, like receipts, or any view with any PII on it you want to focus on. So this is what that looks like. Autorize, browse using a high privilege user, log in with a low privilege user, burp, re-requests everything and gives you prioritized output. Cool, so insecure direct object references is one of my favorites because I won a badass pair of gaming headphones a couple months back. So I found a bug in a really cool company and I had to disclose it, and I ended up calling them on the phone and their help desk guy was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I actually LinkedIn spammed everybody of the IT group of that company, and finally someone accepted, and I told them, like, listen, I'm legit, I'm not like an asshole, I'm not extorting you, I just want to tell you this exists, because I was buying a pair of headphones already. And they're Astros, by the way, they're awesome. And they fixed this bug. So yeah, and so the receipt function basically was an IDOR. You could just iterate up and down and find other people's receipts with their credit card info on it. And they sent me 2 free pair of headphones, and I have one, and one goes to Daniel for his birthday, but I forgot to bring it. Oh, sorry, Dan. But they're sweet headphones, I guarantee it. They're awesome. Anyway, so IDORs, 5 minutes? Okay, cool. So increment, decrement, negative values, attempt to perform sensitive functions, substituting user IDs, things like this. These are how you test IDORs. These are common functions of user files that deal with IDORs. So everything from the CSRF table, anything that says UID, password, or user hashes, emails, images like that are supposed to be private. So you can go through the slides and kind of go through this. And all this is going to be up on GitHub, and if you have questions or whatever. So this is a simple IDOR. I don't know why I put a simple IDOR in here. This is DEF CON. You guys probably knew this. So you see like this numerical value, and you're like, oh, what happens if I change it? And you get someone else's receipt. This is exactly what I did to another place. This was a disclosed bug that's patched, so don't worry about that. They had a bug bounty. Transport, you need to enable HTTP everywhere. There's this awesome script that will basically take a burp log file, again, re-request every request in your site tree over HTTP instead of HTTPS, so you can see what's going over insecure channels. Instead of having to sort columns and burp and do all this stuff, I find this really useful. So it'll just try to downgrade everything, and then you report like this is a SSL downgrade attack or whatever. Logic flaws are usually pretty manual. The one I see a lot is substituting hash parameters where there's like prices or something like that, and they've hashed it and it's irreversible, or they've done something to it and it's irreversible, or I'm too dumb to reverse it, right? But just finding another item that's cheaper, taking its hash and substituting it in usually what it's an e-commerce payment or something like that. And so doing that is usually yields the product for less money. So step manipulation, this is like the bread and butter example everybody gives for logic flaws. Like there's multiple steps, like order or put things in cart, order, checkout, pay, ship. So you just skip everything, or you like put everything in your cart and then you just ship because you have the whole process in burp, and so you just skip a process. Using negative quantities or using negatives in quantity values. So I've actually had websites pay me credit because I put in a negative value on some price thing, or negative quantity, right? Like order number equals 1 usually. I want to buy one thing and I put in like negative 20, and now they've credited my account like $1,000 or something like that. So application level DOS. This is one that's kind of interesting, right? It's not actual DOS, right? I'm not advocating bug bounty like using a botnet or anything like that, but I've seen sites that just can't handle just like parsing a parameter with 40 zeros in it or something, or me putting in like a math function as a parameter value, and the server's like, I don't know what to do this, let me try to process this somehow, and it just falls over. So those are interesting. And then timing attacks. I think there was a DEF CON talk about timing attacks, so you can check that out. Mobile, I'm really running in. So data storage is really important. Check these files for data storage as well as logging. This is the best tool to quickly get spun up on iOS. It's called IDB. It's by Daniel Mayer. Basically, jailbreak your phone, install this tool. It gives you a full GUI list of the handler of all of the files, all of the encryption values, if it's using exploit mitigation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's the most functional tool. I think it's partly based off a talk I gave a long time ago, and he made it in Ruby, and it's super sick. It's the best way to get into iOS testing if you've never done it before. This is a thing about logs. We got to go. Those other vulns, I repeat them again, right? Like, don't discard them. Like content spoofing, referrer leakage, security headers, path disclosure. Keep them in your pocket later to escalate if you can use them. This is one idea of like, if I have 5 or 30 minutes or something like that, what can I do? So I tried to time myself with the methodology using this stuff in here. So in 15 to 30 minutes, I can do most of this using Burp and the automation, maybe an hour, like it depends on how motivated I am, right? So these are like the steps I'd go through. I'd register, I'd hit the password reset, I'd go to all the forms that do security functions, I'd check the cookie, I'd do like I'd perform enumeration on any like UIDs I see in the URL. I'd directory brute force using one of the short lists in the background. I'd upload a file if it had uploads, and then within 30 minutes, or an hour, I can usually find some pretty darn good bugs. Things to take with you. Crowdsource is different. It's the same but different. You find like 20% of the edge case stuff instead of 80%, and a lot of stuff goes quick. Data analysis is cool. You could probably do a 15 to 30 minute web test, and done right, you could get some major vulns. Sec lists, polyglots are cool, and follow all of the bug bounty people on this bug bounty list. I put them all into a Twitter list for you, and you can watch them hack things and talk about their findings. Also, there's a lot of stuff that didn't get put in here. There was a lot of data that I didn't get to parse, so 50% of the data is still unparsed. So I'm going to put it up on GitHub as a Git book, I think, or maybe just Markdown. And you guys can contribute to it if you care enough. If you just want to take it and use it, that's fine. Stuff to go in there, more tooling that I've found. XXE, that's actually meant to say SSRF, a whole bunch of cool SSRF techniques, CAPTCHA bypass, more detail on logic flaws, and to add Android mobile tools that I use often. 13 memes, is that okay? We good? All right. Attribution and thanks. These are bug hunters who did these are bug hunters who did things in this presentation. All of them are super awesome. I respect every single one of them, or who made tools. And also my team at BugCrowd, John, Taj, Ben, Grant, Fatih, Patrick, Katie, Kim, Abby, Casey, Chris, and Sam, and everybody in the bug community. I love you guys. I love doing this for a day job. So that's it.